Hello there. Thank you for staying tuned to Citizen TV on this 25th day of May 2021. You're still watching Daybreak, and it's time to talk about State of the Nation with the Honorable Martha Karua, who is the party leader of NARC Kenya. Good morning, Honorable.
Good morning, Sam.
Great. And let us begin from what has just happened. Is it about 12 days ago? That is on the 13th of May 2021, when you saw the five-judge bench coming out and declaring that the BBI process was unconstitutional. And I remember hosting you on this show on several occasions that you are pretty opposed on principle against the BBI process and the process that was being used to amend the Constitution. First of all, what were your initial reactions upon hearing the judgment by the five judges?
I was very happy. The judgment is well reasoned and legally sound. From where I stand, it affirmed what we in Linda Katiba had been saying all along, that the process was illegal, unconstitutional, and that the process ought not to have been going on. And for that reason, in order to protect the Constitution, kulinda Katiba, we were saying people should reject BBI. The court found in our favor.
Mm-hmm. And looking at that, because there are people that have been, of course, you've heard from the criticism against the court, especially political leaders saying that there's a sense of judicial activism. How do you separate from political feelings about a judgment and the reality, and what takes the country forward? Because Kenyans, while they listen to the courts, they also listen to politicians.
What takes the country forward is respect for the rule of law, abiding by the rules we ourselves have made. This is a constitution and laws that we have passed in our parliament, and we have selected and given power to the judiciary to arbitrate on all disputes concerning the constitution, concerning the law. And when they arbitrate, we must respect those decisions even when they are not in our favor. What I've heard from politicians is basically people throwing tantrums because the decision was not in their favor. It is not any reasoned criticism of the decision. What do they mean by talking of judicial activism? Why not say this is where the judges go wrong? Activism leads to the expansion of the law. This is actually sanctioned by Article 259 of our Constitution, which gives guidelines on interpretation and application of the Constitution by the court. And it says that the judges must interpret that in a manner that gives purpose to the intention of the framers, what we call the spirit of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. The judges did nothing more and nothing less. They did exactly just that. Mm-hmm. They made sure that the intentions of Kenyans in passing the Constitution were followed to the letter. And that's why they painstakingly went to the history of constitution making, the road we traveled, the civic education, to make sure that people were informed and were participating from a point of information, the collection and collation of views, people meeting together in an assembly to discuss those issues, the matter going to parliament and then a referendum. If you look at Article 10 of our Constitution, public participation is entrenched. And the court found that this is at the core of the Constitution. This is what is called the basic structure. Mm-hmm. What are the core things that you cannot touch? It's people's participation, it is inclusiveness, it is openness and accountability, among others. Mm-hmm. BBI was not an open and transparent process. It was not an accountable process, because when sections of Kenyans were complaining that it was not inclusive, it was not following the constitution, the leaders were not listening. They were running ahead of the people. This process violated the constitution. It also attempted to usurp the people's power to initiate amendments to the constitution through a popular process. The president, who is the chief executive of the country, and who the constitution has given a window if he wishes to propose amendment, and that window must be through parliament, through proposals crafted by the Attorney General and then taken to parliament, was usurping the window for the people. Therefore, the process was flawed from day one.
And
like in the old Kanu days.
Yes. Right, Honorable Karua, of course, the judgment was quite clear on that, and those dissatisfied, including the Attorney General, the BBI Secretariat, and IEBC, already filing their appeals against that decision. But I want us to focus specifically on the matters that have been raised by IEBC, just to get a view of what you think about them. For instance, they are saying that the court was wrong on the question of quorum because Article 250 of the Constitution talks about a minimum of 3, a maximum of 9. Yes, the judges may have relied on an IEBC Act of 2011, but the clauses they're referring to, is it paragraph 5 of the second schedule, is no longer existent by virtue of amendment by Parliament, and those amendments were subsequently rendered unconstitutional by the High Court. How would that settle with you, and is it an appealable view?
I think the IBC, the chairman, a lawyer, knows very well that he is operating below quorum. There is a reason why the IBC commissioners are 7. A quorum of 3 is not a majority. 4 would be more like it. He also very well knows that the IBC is not compliant with the not more than 2/3 gender rule. So it is not compliant in more than one way. He also knows that the IEBC is not operating according to the constitutional principles in Article 10. People's participation. They cannot hide and plan elections at anniversary towers without openness and involvement of the people. And by this I mean that in every county, the IEBC should be sitting with the stakeholders. It is difficult because there are many, but they can form a sort of liaison committee made up of political parties, made up of civil society, so that these people get involved in the planning of the elections, in the hiring of the staff, and also help the IEBC in resolving complaints. People's participation is not something you can wish away. I wish that the chair of IEBC, together with his commissioners, would be working hard to be compliant with the Constitution, would be requesting that the process of hiring additional commissioners for the IEBC be expedited, and not wasting public funds and time appealing a ruling when knowing very well that they are not compliant in more than one way. That is my view.
But Honorable Karua, well, yes, they are not compliant in as far as the size of the commission because it's set at 7, but they are not the appointing authority, and we know that there's a process of selecting new commissioners.
And the gender rule.
Well, yes, but they are not the ones to constitute the commission. It's somebody else's work. But what would happen if a commission, through natural attrition or resignations like what happened to IBC, would the quorum still remain at 5, yet there are 3, and specifically an IBC Act that was amended, removing that requirement?
Now, an act of parliament cannot supersede constitutional amendments. If we decide the commissioners are 7, and we have not amended the act to make sure that the commissioners now are 3, because the number of commissioners can be 3, can be up to 10 or 11. The law could have been amended, but Parliament has not acted. The executive has not acted. Rather than throw barbs at the court, the executive should actually be sorry, and Parliament, that they have taken this long to reconstitute the IEBC. The IEBC itself should actually be telling the public, yes, reconstitution is overdue, and that is the truth. You don't try to fight things that are obvious. The IEBC is the least, should be not aggrieved at all by the ruling. They should be saying, maybe this is what we have been saying all along. Let us have more commissioners added or the law amended to make the commission a commission of 3. It would still be unconstitutional because it is an all-male commission. It would not be compliant with the 2/3, not more than 2/3 gender rule. And that's not a provision you can wish away.
And from that judgment, Honorable Karua, is there anything that you disagree with that you find could actually be contested at the Court of Appeal?
Personally, there is nothing I disagree with. I think this is the best judgment ever written in this country, and it has received acclaim worldwide. It is a masterpiece, well reasoned, but I recognize the right of those who find things to disagree with to go on appeal. That is due process, and that is where they should test their grievances, not by throwing barbs at the court. We should differ with respect, criticize the court with respect, but not throw barbs at the court and show disrespect.
And Honorable Karua, so now, because this process began on the 9th of March 2018 when President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga came at the steps of Harambee House, shook hands and decided to focus on 9 key areas that were going to reform the country and make it better when it comes to elections, enhance inclusivity, deal with the corruption and ethnicity. And they might have said that this was the first step to achieving that. So what happens, because it appears that the steam has been taken away by this judgment?
If I were the advisor of the executive, I would tell them, step back and internalize what is going on. The court ruling, internalize even comments that you heard before from the people. The court did not move itself. It was moved by citizens of this country. Therefore, the executive, by disagreeing with what the people are saying or dismissing it offhand, you fight not the court, you fight the citizens who have elected you and who you should be caring about. The one thing that is so wrong with BBI and the entire process, and that's why they are unable to step back and reason, is because the BBI process placed the wants, the wish list, the wants of political leaders above the needs of citizens. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Our health facilities in all the counties are not in a state to respond to the critically ill. Even the center, the referral hospitals, which have the capacity, they need expanded capacity. They need much more to be able to adequately respond. We need to be paying, the government needs to be paying for testing and treatment of those who are affected and those who need testing. They dropped that, yet they prioritize BBI, which is largely a project for succession, to expand the top executive, to remove checks and balances, and give politicians a blank check to do whatever they wish, even when Kenyans are protesting. How can we put politicians wants, not needs, wants above the needs of the electorate? That is the big question.
And Honorable Karua, so now we're where we are. The issues that gave rise to the BBI task force, ethnic antagonism, corruption, divisive elections, they're still a concern. How do you deal with them at a time that we are facing another general election in 14 months?
I'm good you've mentioned another general election. The BBI does not provide anywhere how to go about improving or fixing our broken electoral process to ensure that the voice of the people is respected when they speak through the ballot. So if it was to remove the problems, perennial problems that come up after every election, then the BBI failed. We still, as Kenyans, can get together and fix what is broken in our electoral system using the map, using the north that the Constitution gives. Because in Articles 10, Article 81, 86, and our laws, and many other provisions in the Constitution, we have the guidelines on how to go about having free and fair elections. We have a guide on how to behave so as to diffuse any ethnic antagonism. And some of the answers are to be found on chapter 6 on leadership and integrity. If as leaders we followed the dictates of the Constitution, if we followed this chapter, we would be able to successfully fight corruption. We would be able to diffuse ethnic antagonism because leaders would act in the best interests of Kenyans and not manipulate Kenyans in order to remain in power. So what I'm saying is, for all the 9 points the BBI brothers set out, let us implement the Constitution fully, and we shall be able to make the transformation that the people envisaged when we enacted the 2010 Constitution. We shall be able to overcome our challenges.
And Honorable Karua, you have observed several administrations, especially in their sunset years, and if you talk about the current one, then they are entering their final year in August. What do you think the president must do to define his legacy at a time that the relationship with his deputy is not the best, as it were, at the start?
He needs to reflect and ask whether it is a priority, and I think it is, for him to embrace the rule of law. Yesterday, he was handing over KMC to KDF in spite of court orders, and it has become the hallmark of this government to flagrantly disobey court orders. That does not augur well. A nation that is not founded on the rule of law proceeds to anarchy. So in his sunset years, I would urge President Uhuru Kenyatta to return this nation to a nation governed by the rule of law by leading his government to obey court orders, and when he is displeased with them, to follow due process and appeal those orders, even when they are inconvenient. He should be bringing the nation together, leading by example, by having good relations with his deputy. Even when you don't agree, you can have a working relationship. Having the handshake with the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, does not mean that he cannot continue having good relations with his deputy or working relations with his deputy. He has set a very bad example where a president can ignore the Constitution and the law and lock out his deputy from work. One wonders then, who would want to be a deputy in those circumstances? Previously, we had governors, some governors, not all of them, mistreating their deputies. This is completely unconstitutional. The president has joined the bandwagon. It is a bad example. They should be able to agree to disagree, to differ with respect on some aspects, but to continue to operate as the presidency, because the presidency consists of both the president and his deputy. Or, like I've said before, they can both resign and pave way for the elections. They were elected as a unit. They must continue as a unit. And if it has reached a place where the president feels he no longer can work with his deputy, and if there is anything his deputy has done which contravenes the Constitution, the only way out, either impeach him or put up with him and develop a workable relationship.
Let me take you back to that finding of the judge, of the 5 judges, and they said that the president had failed the integrity test, and part of the grounds of appeal by the Attorney General is that such finding exposes the president to judicial or rather legal proceedings. What would that entail? How bad is such a finding?
Not necessarily to legal proceedings, maybe to impeachment, but the judges made that finding, and it's up to any Kenyan or to Parliament to act if they deem it necessary. Remember, Parliament itself was found to be unconstitutional through the advisory of the Chief Justice and ought to be dissolved. So we have a situation where 2 arms of government have been found to be in violation of the Constitution, because the cabinet is a cabinet of the president, and minus the president, that cabinet cannot exist. I think it's time for us as a nation to reflect. What is it that we can do better? What can we learn from this landmark ruling? What can we learn from the comments Kenyans have been making about this process? We should have ears to hear, not only things that commend us, but things that also point out the wrongs that we are doing. Mm-hmm. And it is increasingly looking that President Uhuru's administration only likes accolades. Any criticism, however merited, they are allergic to. I would say it's a time to reflect and make right what is deficient, so that he can leave a legacy, mm-hmm. a strong foundation of following the rule of law. Actually, I would say constitutionalism and the rule of law.
Right, and let me take you to a bit of politics, because just last week we saw some by-elections concluded, Juja, Bonchari, Rorie. Of course, you may have seen the outcomes, but I'm more concerned about the conduct of those elections that we're witnessing, a bit of chaos. The chairperson of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, even saying that it's unfortunate that the security would be the weakest link. Commissioner Gulia saying that it's unfortunate when you start to militarize democracy. What do we do to sort this out as we approach the election next year?
I'm just amused that the IEBC would accuse security of being the weakest link and not see its own weakness. The Constitution gives the IEBC powers during the elections, even to give directions to the police. I would have expected the Commission to be telling the police, arrest these people who disrupted counting. They should be seeking the prosecution of people who violated the electoral code. But the Commission behaves as though they are powerless. Let them wake up. If they were to tell the police, prosecute these people, the police would prosecute. That is not to say that the police should sleep on their duties. That is to say, see the log in your eye before you see the speck in your brother or your sister's eye. So the IEBC is not doing their duties as per the Constitution. The police are not doing their duties and are succumbing to use and abuse by the political class. Let everybody do their duty, and I would urge all of them to emulate some very gallant law enforcement officers in the US during the elections, the last elections they had, where even when the former President Trump was asking election officials, I remember in Georgia, the secretary, to find 11 million votes, the secretary, although leaning towards the Republicans, just said, I got a job to do, and he obeyed the Constitution. Where his own vice president, Mike Pence, went on to validate Biden's win in Congress, in spite of Trump consistently saying it was rigged. These are examples of individuals who choose to follow the rule of law. And in Kenya, I would say, look at the 5 judges. Gallant professionals, gallant judicial officers, who in a difficult case said it as it is. That is what we need. So we need Wafula Chebukati and team, before pointing out the weaknesses of the police, they themselves to utilize the powers at hand. And we need a police force that is independent. That is why their independence has been entrenched in the Constitution. We need a police officer saying, sorry, sir, sorry, madam, you can't do this. The law forbids you. I would have wanted to see a police officer getting Governor Nyoro out of the tallying center and telling him you are out of order and getting him prosecuted. I would like to see a police force that applies the law equally, irrespective of the status of the person who violates.
And Honorable Karua, is it that easy to be left to conscience of the individual officers, knowing that in 2007, 2008, part of the reason why the country went to the post-war chaos was because of involvement of police officers?
The involvement of police officers being used by the political class. We are telling the police officers, your role is now acknowledged in the Constitution. You even have a constitutional commission. That is your employer. You're no longer beholden to politicians. Behave your part. Let everybody, including the politicians, behave their part. But the police, the security agencies are critical. The courts are critical. The IEBC is critical. If they play their roles well, they will whip all of us to order. The IEBC has even powers to stop a political party that continuously violates from participating in the elections. They have powers to stop a candidate who continuously violates. They have teeth, but they refuse to bite when it is necessary. And I'm saying, as Kenyans, each one of us has a duty, as a citizen, and those in authority have even more responsibility. Let us reflect on this judgment, and let us rise up to our role of upholding and defending the Constitution. That is what is missing, and that is what will save this nation from chaos. That is what will give us free and fair elections, where we have clear winners and losers. Even if one wins by a small margin, and it's a clean win, Kenyans will accept. Let us make the vote count. Let us safeguard our votes as Kenyans and not tolerate manipulation by those who want to take away our agency of being able to elect our leaders.
And Honorable Karua, let's now focus on the road to 2022, because in 2017, if you recall, there are several amendments that were taken in the year 2016, including the one that brought us to where we are with a commission of 7. So all those reforms were put in place, including the transmission of results. The Supreme Court of Kenya, in the judgment of the presidential petition of August 2017, highlighted some of the key weaknesses that the country was facing. If you're talking about the 3G connectivity, if you're talking about the transmission of results, and now we're just 14 months to the next election. In your assessment, how much of improvement have we made that will make sure that we don't get back to the Supreme Court or with an outcome like was of the August 8th?
Unfortunately, we have done absolutely nothing. And that is why I'm saying this is the priority, not constitutional amendments. Alongside health issues, which I have outlined because of COVID, alongside minding livelihoods, because the downside of the economic aftermath of COVID is that many Kenyans cannot put food on their table. The rates of unemployment, the broken electoral process. These are the priorities. And we really must get down to doing this. Yes, electronic transmission, which as we saw was manipulated to get us vifaranga, the famous quote by the former Prime Minister, vifaranga via computer or computer-generated leaders. Those are the issues we must look into, and they do not require constitutional amendments. I've already said that the Constitution has enough guidelines. If indeed we were to amend the law, it's the rules and regulations to make the process of tallying and counting more transparent, to ensure that each agent who has been accredited on behalf of a candidate or a party must sign and either agree and disagree with the tally, because those are the witnesses. When the IEBC treats the agents as though they don't matter, when they draw them out of the tallying centers, which is the complaints of many people during petitions, including me, when our courts continue to use the rules that were there before the 2010 Constitution, we are all falling short. It is time to look at the rules so that the court stops asking petitioners to justify why they want to scrutinize. If the Constitution already tells you that the election has to be accountable, verifiable, and has to be accountable and verifiable, you cannot be verified without scrutiny. So it means that the Constitution already justifies why you must be given the records. These are some of the rules we need to change. There are many more, and this is time to meet on the table and also to agree, even amidst electronic transmission. We all have smartphones. Many people have. We should make it mandatory for the IEBC not to necessarily give the agents a copy, but to take electronic images through the telephones so that the agents with smartphones will also take their records. That will prevent any manipulation of the results when they are being transmitted. There are very many little things we can do which ensure that it's the people's voice we shall hear during the next general elections. That if the people reject you, you cannot become either a member of the county assembly or a member of parliament or a governor or any of the other seats or even a president. There are very little things tweaking we need to do of the electoral process. Also making the officers working for the commission in the counties, and that means in the whole country, answerable to the people, not answerable to the political leadership, not answerable to the commission at the headquarters, such that they can be told what to utter, what not to utter. And making them accountable to the people is ensuring that the people participate in the processes of hiring them and also in the process of monitoring what they are doing right at the polling station and continuously. And that way we will help our courts not to be given problems, myriads of problems after elections. We will see less petitions if we fix the electoral process.
But even as you do that, I remember speaking to the commissioners sometime last year, and they told me that the server, you remember that server, the controversial server that was in Europe, and Europe people were sleeping. They told
Which
me
was
that
sleeping in France.
right. They told me that it had brought to Kenya, so all the servers were here. But there's the question of connectivity. It's not in the mandate of IBC to enhance connectivity in the country.
That is why I have already said we have smartphones. And I'm sure in every polling station in Kenya there will be an agent or agents with smartphones. And we always buy phones and their smartphones for the IEBC officers. So apart from transmitting electronically, take an electronic image and send that image via WhatsApp to the center as a backup for either the transmission, electronic transmission, and also as a point of verifying that what everybody saw. Let the agent sign. Whether they agree or not, let us make it lawful and a mandatory requirement that once you accept duties as an agent, you have to sign. So that the witnesses at the primary counting place will either say, yes, this is the tally, or I disagree.
Right.
That is very, very important. But when we say that elections should be transparent and candidates should have agents, and we either throw those agents out or behave as though they don't matter and say that you can't invalidate the results merely because agents didn't sign. Let the agents sign.
Okay.
That is the way to make elections transparent, accountable, and verifiable. Very little tweaking of the electoral system.
All right, Honorable Karua, I want us to take a look at some feedback that has been coming to us via different media. And I want to begin with Tom Wangu. Martha Karua is very eloquent and articulate. I agree with her every bit. The judgment should be respected, and those who feel dissatisfied should appeal. That's Tom Wangu. Then there's Njururi Blamo. You said there is a very simple common sense philosophical rule that law is made for man, not man for law. The judges were disrespectful for no legal basis or reason. People are not only those who say no. Well, then Kalu Lepario, you say that it is utterly dishonest for Honorable Karua to claim that public participation wasn't done in the process of initiating and executing the BBI bill, yet the promoters spent 2 years extensively engaging the people on the 9-point agenda. Talks about public participation. Then Omwando Vikri, you said that let Honorable Karua get away with the selective perception that Kenyans don't support. Why let Karua get away with the selective perception that Kenyans don't support BBI process on 5 million signed in support of the bill? What compares to the creation of ward funds that guarantees bottom-up approach, middle income, or rather economic revolution? Well, that's Omondo Victory. Then, Mike, you said that interesting how Honorable Karua and William Ruto are now the biggest defenders of the Constitution. In this republic, constitutionalism only makes sense when you are either ordinary monarchy or out of power. And Honorable Karua, I don't know what you have to say to that, specifically on that viewer who still thinks that public participation was observed in the collection of views by the BBI task force, and secondly, on defending the Constitution because you're out of power.
I have always defended the Constitution, and I'm a person who's been very outspoken in and out of power, so you can get clips of me talking about rule of law before and now, and that is a fact. And even when we made the Constitution, we were making the Constitution, I was one who consistently said, make the Constitution and make laws that even your worst enemy will be comfortable with. This Constitution is good for you, it's good for me. About 4 million people or 5 million people, and I remember there were 4, not 5, signing for the Constitution. Remember, most of those people were young people working in Kazi Mtaani who had to sign when given by the chiefs, who were acting as representatives of their employer. That is not voluntary signing. And in fact, why would the provincial administration be involved in collection of signatures? A people's initiative must just be that, not a government initiative, where the initiators must look for signatures their own way.
Right.
The very same way Okoa Kenya, which I then supported, was collecting signatures, not through provincial administration. The same way Karua Court's third way collected signatures without support from the administration. These may appear minor things, but these violations of the law are what constitutes illegalities that made the court, some of the illegalities that made the court nullify. And it doesn't matter how many people support something. If it is unlawful, according to our constitution, if it's unconstitutional, it has to be nullified. Remember, if you're talking about the people, please remember the 67%, over 67% of Kenyans who supported the constitution. And if we are democratic, then we must follow the constitution and our laws to the letter. The laws are not put there for you to choose when to obey. It's not an option. And that's what Kenyans must know.
Honorable Karua, I want us to wind up on this because at the moment politically there are different organizations. There is the one that was working on the BBI. In it, there's still Okoa Kenya Alliance. There's the Hustlers movement propagated by Deputy President William Ruto. How do you make of all these organizations and where do you find yourself, in there or out there?
I'm very sad that you have deliberately not mentioned Leader Katiba, to which I belong. You can mention all those others and then ask me where I am, yet you know that I am part of the conveners of Linda Katiba. You want to find Martha Karua, you want to find her in organization, find her in Linda Katiba. Politically, I belong to NARC Kenya, and you introduce me as a leader of NARC Kenya. I belong to NARC Kenya, a political party desirous of capturing power in order to govern the country in accordance with its beliefs from a lens of social justice. NARC Kenya has not at the moment decided who to join or not join moving forward. But as far as matters Constitution and BBI go, I am part of Linda Katiba, very keen on defending the 2010 Constitution, on seeing it implemented. I implore you as the media, stop trying to box us into formations that, for whatever reason, you may find palatable. Stop pushing Kenyans into a narrative that you either belong to the side of the President and Honorable Raila Odinga or the side of William Ruto. There is more in Kenya than those two sides. I belong to NARC Kenya politically and to Linda Katiba as a movement intent on ensuring that Kenya is governed through constitutionalism and the rule of law. And that's, I have been consistent on that, and I will remain consistent on it.
And so, well, you've been successful through initiative. I remember at the start of Linda Katiba, you were speaking to Kenyans to reject it. Now the Kenyans will not even get that chance to reject it because it appears the judgment has done that before the appeal. So what next?
Let us attend to things that are urgent. Fighting COVID pandemic, fixing the broken electoral process before the next general elections, livelihoods, minding the livelihoods of Kenyans, and many other issues that afflict Kenyans. Let us prioritize the needs, and I underline, the needs of Kenyans, not the wants of a few political leaders. Let us remember that our transformative constitution places the needs of Kenyans above all else. The old model, which is where BBI was returning us with the imperial presidency and lack of accountability, is the parasitic model where the leaders ride on the back of Kenyans. Let Kenyans be very mindful that failing to safeguard the 2010 Constitution is a return to the parasitic authoritarian model.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Martha Karua, na Kenya Party Leader, for speaking to us this morning to talk about the state of the nation, and wish you well in your endeavors, even as you continue with your journey politically and in defense of the Constitution alongside Kenyans. That's our time here on State of the Nation. But up next will be Willis Raburu bringing you the latest on matters social. I think they are talking about self-love today, so be sure to catch that conversation and share your feedback via Citizen TV Kenya at Willis Raburu. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. Bye for now.